Rivalry week, man. We got a great slate of games coming up. Rivalry week can get pretty crazy sometimes, so it's going to be really interesting to see. First, let's dive in to Mississippi, the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. Of course, Ole Miss is the home team here. -2 in favor of Ole Miss. Where are you diving with this one, Shoob?
So this one all of a sudden got really interesting with all the Lane Kiffin, the Auburn rumors that are circling around the internet right now. Ole Miss is at home in this game, which also makes it very interesting. And there's a lot of people out there that think that this is going to be Lane Kiffin's last game as the Rebels head coach. I guess we really won't know for sure until after Thursday. But in recent history, Mississippi State has kind of struggled in this rivalry. There's been a lot of seasons where I thought Mississippi State had the better team going into this game, but Ole Miss just kind of seems to have their number for the most part. However, this year, I know Lane Kiffin tweeted that he's focused on the Egg Bowl. He was reading that book. He posted that picture on Twitter. He says that's where his head's at, but I don't know if I really believe that. We saw what happened when Ole Miss went to play Arkansas last week. I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a reflection of where the head coach's head is spinning right now and where he's looking around. I got to go with Mississippi State, man. I know Mississippi State has been a little underwhelming the past few weeks. They did hit on their win total, by the way, which I'm happy about. But Mississippi State, they seem to struggle against the really good teams. But when they play teams of equal caliber, they seem to have a little bit of an edge for the most part this year. And I think Leach and his guys are going to be ready for this one. I'm just sort of feeling that. I think the Bulldogs pick this one up. So I'm going to say Miss State in a minor upset here.
This game is going to be decided purely by Quinshon Judkins, I believe, and how Mississippi State is able to limit him or a lack thereof. Judkins is amazing. The offense kind of goes with his success. Jackson Dart hasn't been the guy to get that done. It's actually been quite the opposite. It's been their run game. That's one thing Ole Miss has really prided itself on this year. But I'm with you. I think Mississippi State has a very undervalued team this year, and I really like Mike Leach's ability to air it out and score quickly when Ole Miss has to be more of a ground and pound kind of game. So if Mississippi State can limit Judkins and score get on the board early, I think it spells disaster for Ole Miss. Not a blowout, but disaster being you're going to lose the game. So I'm going with Mississippi State as well.
All right, so we're both on State to win this game. But we'll see. It could be an interesting one. I'm going to be ready for this. It's Thanksgiving night, by the way, on Thursday. So how about a big matchup in the American? This one is very big. It seems like every other year the American has the two teams that are potentially playing for the conference championship. They always seem to have them scheduled the last game of the regular season. However, with UCF having a head-to-head versus both of these teams, we covered this on part 1 of the podcast, UCF is very likely to get in over the loser of this game. So this essentially is, I guess, technically a de facto playing game for the American Conference Championship. So with that being said, who do you think wins? Cincinnati's at home, and they're only a 2-point favorite.
True toss-up. I don't have a strong feeling either way. But I do think, given what's on the line, given that Cincinnati's at home, the stadium's going to be rocking. I'm going with Cincy purely for the home field advantage. And because what the stakes are, the home field advantage is going to play in their favor. I think Cincy takes it.
Yeah, you know what? This one is very tough for me because I like Tulane a lot. And I think Tulane's defense can shut down Cincinnati. Cincinnati really hasn't been super impressive this year, to be honest. But you know what, man? I'm kind of feeling you on the Cincy vibe in this game. The fact that they're at home, the fact that they've kind of been there before. Cincinnati's played in these high pressure situations. Obviously, last year's team had to walk the tightrope to get into the college football playoff. And you're right, the home atmosphere and everything. I don't know if Tulane really has gone and faced that. When they played UCF, they were at home. When they played SMU, they were at home. I think Tulane's toughest road test so far was Kansas State earlier in the year. But at that point in time, Kansas State wasn't really playing for as much as they thought they would be at this point in the year. So I'm with you, man. I think Tulane maybe is a slightly better team, but because it's at Cincinnati, I just think Cincinnati is somehow going to pull off this win here. I don't know how they do it, but I think they just will.
Cincinnati's feeling good about themselves, man. They just got Dana Beers too, the five-star 5-star drinking athlete,
Oh, the
right?
Barstool guy.
Yeah, the Barstool guy, yeah. Well, that being said, let's jump into the Sunshine Showdown of Florida versus a hot Florida State team, -9.5 in favor of the Noles. Who you got, Shoob?
So this one, obviously, as a Florida grad, I'm admittedly a little bit nervous going to this one, man. Florida State has been rolling teams, and they have been doing it very much under the radar. Kind of FSU has been sort of not really in the playoff picture, but because of that, people haven't been really been paying attention to them. But over the last month or so, FSU has been steamrolling teams. And that's what good teams do. Even though they played, poorer teams, really good teams, they beat up and they beat those bad teams by like 30 points or more. And that's what Florida State's been doing. And there's a reason why they're a 9.5 point favorite. The odds makers agree. Florida State is almost a 10 point, better team. And they are at home, obviously. I think the crowd in this game will be electric. This is the first time that Florida is going to play in Tallahassee since 2019, believe it or not, because of COVID. So for all those reasons and the fact that FSU, it's for the first time in a few years, this program has some juice, it has some life, and they feel good about this game. And as far as Florida, if they're coming off a really bad loss against Vanderbilt, they made a ton of mistakes. I think Florida will obviously not make those mistakes like they did against Vanderbilt. They will play a good game. I expect Florida to give their best in this game, but I don't think Florida is going to win. I think Florida State is going to win this game outright. And as far as the spread, this is what makes it really interesting. I've given a lot of thought into this, and I either think FSU will blow Florida out or Florida will keep it really close and cover the spread by 7 points or less. So since I'm a Florida guy, man, I got to go with the Gators in this one. I'm going to say Florida covers, but I'm not very confident in this. So yeah, I'll stop talking. What's your take on this one?
So, I mean, Florida State is hitting their stride, man. They look really, really good. I think if Florida State played Clemson this week, they would probably beat Clemson. I really do think Florida State is just ultimately finally figuring out with Norvell, and we'll see how this plays into next year. They have some great momentum going into bowl season. It's just a shame that they can't play in the championship game. I mean, if they were in the
Coastal.
opposite end of the division, if they were in the Coastal, they'd be dominating. But with that being said, that's not the case, unfortunately, for FSU. And here we are. FSU is also at home in this game, man. In addition to that, this is a heated rivalry. This is a heated rivalry. But the thing is, I don't know how much Florida wants this game. I know it's a rivalry, but Florida has had such a disappointing season. I feel like they might be looking ahead to just improving and getting to the offseason. Florida State is trying to ride that momentum, and Florida State wants to make a statement in this game, I am sure. And they want to show that they've arrived. I'm going Florida State both ways, man. I think Florida State on the win and on the cover is the way to go with this. I would not be shocked if this ended up being a 34-17 type game in favor of Florida State. And give me the Noles.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And you're right about the game maybe mattering more for Florida State. Like Norvell really needs this win. He hasn't picked up a win over Florida, and they need that for the recruiting because right now they still are losing that recruiting battles right now with UF and Miami. So this would be huge in that regard. But you're right. Florida, it's Napier's first year, so he kind of gets that excuse. But I could totally see your end of the prediction here holding up. So kind of an underrated rivalry game going into this year. But anyways, this one's certainly not underrated. This one is big time in the national spotlight. It's going to be an early kickoff, of course, because Fox, big noon. The game, Michigan, number 3 versus number 2, Ohio State. Ohio State's a 7.5 point favorite. Interesting line there. What is your take?
Well, one shoot, I really wish this was a night game because I mean this atmosphere
Yeah.
for this game's already crazy. I really wish they made this a night game, and quite frankly, I don't know why they didn't because that just adds a whole new layer to this. But with that being said, look, man, Michigan has had a lot of dominant wins, but who have they beaten? Penn State, cool. Um, Illinois, cool. Probably should have lost that game, but you won, so I'm not going to take that away from you. But probably should have lost to Illinois. Ohio State has had their struggles too, man, but Ohio State's just a better team to me. So of course I'm going to take Ohio State to win. They're also at home, and you're giving 7 and a hook here. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think Ohio State is going to hold Michigan under 20, but I think Michigan is going to hold Ohio State under 30. So with that being said, I'm thinking this is going to be about maybe like a 28-17 type of game. Give me Ohio State on the cover as well.
Interesting. So I am with you as far as it maybe eyeing on the side of a more defensive oriented game. And we kind of already talked about like the X's and O's earlier in part one of this podcast, which by the way, if you haven't listened, go check out part one of the pod. I am agreeing with you as far as Ohio State winning. I think
And
Ohio
Blake
State,
Corum is also out, man. Like that's half of Michigan's offense.
right? Yeah, I was just about to mention that Corum is out, which definitely does not help Michigan at all. And I think Ohio State is just the better team. You have to factor in JJ McCarthy against an Illinois defense that is pretty solid. He's pretty much struggled. This Michigan passing attack just isn't really clicking. And Michigan's been able to get away with that because they've had Blake Corum. The run game has been dominant, and they haven't really played the best teams this year. So Michigan's been able to get away with that. But now you're playing against Ohio State, and Jim Knowles is the defensive coordinator. That defense has gotten good pretty quickly for Ohio State. I have a hard time just believing that JJ McCarthy is just going to all of a sudden light it up against Ohio State. I don't think that's going to be the case. And now they don't even have Blake Corum, who's a really good running back. He's extremely valuable to Michigan's offense. That spells a lot of trouble for Michigan in this one. And then on the other side, we talked about it again in part one. If you haven't listened, this Ohio State offense statistically it looks good, but is it really as good as the numbers suggest? And I think they will struggle a little bit against Michigan's defense, which has been also better than expected going into this year. So, but with all that being said, I think the tiebreaker is I just trust CJ Stroud and I just trust Ohio State's ability to actually throw the ball more than Michigan. That's going to be the difference for me at the end of the day. So Ohio State wins, but I think Michigan will still be competitive. I really do. I really think this will be a great game. So if you're giving me a touchdown and a hook, I'm going to take Michigan to cover actually, but it's like, walking the tightrope of covering that. I don't think Michigan will be within like 3 or 4 points. So,
Well, let's move on. How about another game, the Palmetto Bowl, South Carolina and Clemson. South Carolina coming off a hot win against Tennessee. Was that their Super Bowl? Are they ready for Clemson? What's going on here, Shoob?
yeah, this makes this game much more harder to predict now just because like which South Carolina team is going to show up. The South Carolina team that lost 38-6 in the swamp 2 weeks ago and didn't score a single offensive point, or the South Carolina team that dropped 63 on Tennessee. Like, what in the world is going on, man? I really don't know. And I don't think the odds makers know either. The spread is at 14.5. And to be honest, I kind of lean South Carolina on the spread, I guess, but I I have to play it safe, man, because like who in their right mind is going to take South Carolina to win? Do you think you're just going to get that repeat performance against Clemson? I mean, I guess it could happen, but I feel
If
like
that
you're being
happens, Shane Beamer is going to have a great offseason.
oh, he certainly will, but I feel like you got to be a little bit of a homer to take South Carolina to win this game outright. So I have to safely pick Clemson, I guess, even though, you can tell by what I've been saying, I'm not like super confident in this. And as far as the spread, I guess I'll ride the wave. I guess I will say South Carolina, you know what? You can keep it within 2 touchdowns. I think they can. And I'm just going to say, all right, hopefully what happened last week wasn't a fluke and you actually bring it again this week. So I will say South Carolina can cover that plus 14.5 points there.
I'm with you. Clemson wins. South Carolina cover. I mean, look, who knows? Maybe South Carolina is really hitting their stride right now. Or they might have just maybe noticed a defect in Tennessee's offensive game, or defense at least. And that's what they were able to take advantage of. I think they're a quality team. I don't think Clemson's offense is not electrifying by any stretch of the imagination, but their defense is good. So just because of those parameters, I think South Carolina can keep it within 2 touchdowns. And the line is there at 14.5, man. So even if they lose by 14, you still cover.
That is a good point. Clemson doesn't necessarily have the firepower to just pull away and make this one a blowout. I mean, at least we presume. So, yeah,
They
I
haven't
think
shown that anyway.
yeah, so I think the listeners both realize that this one's kind of like all over the place. Very hard to nail down what we think's going to happen. But anyways, this game has all of a sudden gotten very interesting now. The Governor's Cup, Louisville is at Kentucky, and Kentucky's only a 3-point favorite. He talked about how Louisville is playing a lot better now. And I just checked Malik Cunningham. He was out last week against NC State, but Louisville seems pretty confident that Cunningham is going to play in this game. So, with that being said, what's your verdict on this game now with that news?
I have to stay loyal to what I said back in win totals early on, man. And I said in win totals that Louisville might be better than Kentucky when that game comes around. And I'm taking Louisville to win this game. I've got to stick with it. I said Malik Cunningham. I cited Malik Cunningham as the primary reason for that. And the fact that he may play is why I'm not deviating from that.
You know what, man? That take that you had earlier in the year, that is aged like some good wine. Maybe not the finest wine, but it's looking like it's aging pretty good. And I'm with you, man. I hate to not disagree so much so far, but I'm with you. I Louisville has impressed me in recent weeks, and now you add in Cunningham playing. I'm sure he's going to play a great game. Kentucky's got a good defense, but I think Louisville gets him here, and Kentucky just it feels like maybe they had their Super Bowl last week against Georgia, and it's like, okay, you lost that game. Are you really going to bring it again this week for Louisville? I know it's a rivalry game, but it's not like you're playing Georgia or your SEC competition. You've already kind of been through the ringer. Can you bring it again this week? I think Louisville gets him, and I know Kentucky's had their number in recent years, but I think the Cardinals get him this week as well. So that's a minor upset there in the Governor's Cup.
What about the Civil War, man? Oregon versus Oregon State, the battle of the highlighters last year, and Oregon State was able to take it. Whose highlighter is brighter this year?
Yes, whose highlighter is brighter? Yeah, man. Every single year, this is always my favorite uniform matchup. The Civil War is the best combination of uniforms and like color contrasts in all of college football. Can't tell me otherwise. So this one's really tough, man. It really is, because I'm not gonna lie. I've been riding the fence about picking an Oregon State upset here. I really have been. But I really liked what I saw from Oregon last week, and I think Oregon will show up to win this game with what's at stake. They have to win this game to go to the Pac-12 championship. They have to. And I think Oregon State's going to bring it to. Oregon State is quietly one of the better 8-3 teams in the country.
Very respectable team.
Yeah, they haven't really made much noise, but they just kind of been lingering around.
They haven't made much noise because they're Oregon State, man. 8-3 though. Very solid team.
Yeah. They played a very good game against USC at the beginning of the year. They arguably really should have beat USC in that game.
They really should have.
They've been competitive. They went into overtime and barely lost to Washington. So Oregon State has like barely lost in competitive games to good
there's
teams.
A path for them to be 10-1, man.
Yeah, there was.
Things fell their way.
Exactly. And I think Oregon obviously is the better team, but the odds makers are telling you that Oregon is, at risk of losing because it's only a 3-point spread. I'm going to take Oregon to win this game because even though I really am considering taking Oregon State, I have to give the slight edge to Oregon. And I really think this is going to be a great game. I've very close to picking Oregon State to cover, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take Oregon to cover this 3 points, even though I'm not very confident in this. I could easily see this game being either Oregon State upsetting them outright or keeping it within a field goal. But I'm going to say narrowly Oregon covers.
Very admirable, Shoob. I have no such honor. I am going to take Oregon and then take Oregon State on the cover because, again, I think Oregon will win this game because of everything that's at stake right now, right? And it is hard for a team like Oregon State to win this game in back-to-back years. I think that's another thing that really plays into effect here.
That is
now,
true.
The other consideration is this Oregon State team is very undervalued for how good they are. We just mentioned it. They probably should have beat USC. They could have beaten Washington. They could easily be a 10-1 team right now. And if they were 10-1, they would probably be ranked in the top 15 right now and potentially in consideration for the college football playoff. It's crazy. And so we can't discount that. 8-3 looks different. And Oregon State doesn't get as much love because they're Oregon State and they're not a big helmet logo. But the thing is, they're right up there with Oregon. And so them winning would not surprise me at all. And that's why I'm going to hedge like a coward here.
Yeah, I mean, I almost was a coward. Like I said, I'm not confident in this one, but I think we both agree that we expect this one to be a nail biter. And yeah, this is another really underrated rivalry. So I'm looking forward to it. I love when the Civil War is a ranked matchup, so give me that all day long. All right, Notre Dame and USC. Boy, Notre Dame at one point in the year, man, we say it every single week. What this team lost to Stanford. This
And
team really
Marshall.
lost to
And Marshall.
Stanford and Marshall. But Stanford's worse. Like that Stanford loss is worse. Somehow though, Notre Dame has really righted the ship big time, and they have sort of turned it into the team that we all thought they would be at the beginning of the year.
They've been winning and they've been doing it dominantly too.
They have. They beat Boston College 44-0 last week,
And
and
they
now
beat
they go
Clemson
at
before that.
USC.
They
Right.
dominated Clemson before that.
And now for the first time in a long time, this rivalry game actually has like really big implications at stake as far as USC's. USC is a college football playoff on the line. This obviously isn't a conference game. USC locked up their spot in the Pac-12 championship. But as far as the college football playoff, obviously USC's got to win this game. They're only a 5.5 point favorite at home. This one's really interesting, man. What do you think's going to happen?
Give me the Irish.
Oh boy.
USC's reign or path ends here. The Irish are going they're on fire, man. The Irish are playing so well. I mean, they have been dominating, just as we just said. I mean, when you look at what they did to Clemson, well, it makes me think they can't do that to USC, man. I think USC is going to have more offensive success, but the only way I see USC winning this game is if Notre Dame just suffers the turnover bug, man. But other than that, I really love what Notre Dame's putting together. Marcus Freeman has this team on such a good trajectory for next year. And we'll probably find Notre Dame ranked in preseason top 15 next year if they keep this up. So, really, really good recovery by Notre Dame. And I'm sticking with them.
I love it, man. I love it. So we all know my shtick this year. I've been fading USC every time it comes up, and I've really gotten burned by doing that because USC somehow is 10-1. And yeah, the turnover bug, like you said, man, it's really helped carry this wave for USC. But again, we talked about it on part one of the pod. Caleb Williams is so freaking good.
He's
And in this
amazing.
type of game, I would say, I think off the top of my head, I would say Notre Dame is probably the best defense that USC has faced all season long. Maybe Oregon State and Notre Dame are comparable defenses, but this is going to be one of the better defenses that USC has faced. I really think Caleb Williams has been playing hero ball. He did it against USC. Do I think Notre Dame can maybe disrupt this USC offense a little bit and gave Caleb Williams some problems? I think maybe, but is that going to be enough? Does Notre Dame have the offensive firepower to control the game and control the line of scrimmage enough to keep this USC, offense off the field? They were able to control the line of scrimmage against Clemson and a really bad Boston College team. Notre Dame is going to really have to play keep away big time in this game, not turn the ball over. Like that is huge. Just don't turn the ball over, and Notre Dame can easily win this game. But I don't think it's going to happen, man. I don't. I think Caleb Williams is going to win this game again for USC. However, I think Notre Dame will cover. 5.5 is just enough to where I'm like, I think Notre Dame is going to keep it to a field goal game.
I
But
could definitely see this being one of those classic Caleb Williams, you know, final drive as time expires, game winning touchdowns like they had against Oregon State kind of thing. If they do win, I think that's going to be the nature of how it happens. But it'll be
yeah,
interesting to see, man. I'll definitely be watching this game. It's going to be a good one.
turnovers, man. If Notre Dame turns the ball over, just sayonara. But if they don't, your prediction could end up happening, man. Very well could. USC's defense is not good. It's not. So
All right. Well, what about the Sunflower Showdown, man? Kansas versus Kansas State, minus 12 in favor of Kansas State. So much on the line in this game. Kansas State must have this game to go to the Big 12 championship. If they lose and Texas wins, Texas is in. There is so much on the line I mean, I'll tell you what, Texas, they're huge Kansas fans this week. And honestly, I would like to see Kansas State make the Big 12 championship. How often do you see a team like K State, who doesn't recruit at the best level, get to the Big 12 championship? I don't. I want to see an all purple Big 12 championship, man. I want to see someone that's not OU or Texas take it this year.
well, let's hope that Kansas decides, you know what, screw you, Texas. We're gonna we're gonna lay down this week and make sure you don't get to the Big 12 championship game.
That'd be kind of hilarious.
It would be, but obviously that's not what's going to happen. I think Kansas will have a good performance, but the problem is, I mean, yeah, one of my worst picks of the entire season was picking Kansas to upset Texas last week, and I really just did not factor in like just how dominant Texas has in the line of scrimmage over Kansas, and that just showed in that game. And we've seen that these are the teams, the types of teams that could give Kansas some problems here. And you also factor in how good Will Howard has been playing. I think Kansas will show up, obviously, to play this game. This is the first time in years, and I mean years, that the Sunflower Showdown has have had anything of like relative significance, which I love. I'm glad that we're even picking this rivalry game. Never thought we'd be at this point. I think K-State wins this game, obviously. They're just the better team. They have the better players along the lines of scrimmage, and that's going to be the difference for me. And additionally, Will Howard, again, playing a lot better than Adrian Martinez was, and I think that will help them win this game. So I think there will be some points in this one, and I think K-State covers this minus 12. I think K-State can win by 2 touchdowns or more, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas keeps it relatively close.
It's just one of those games where so much is on the line, Shoob. It's also a rivalry game. Jalen Daniels is back, and I know he laid a stinker against Texas, but I mean, when you're dominating the line of scrimmage like that, it's hard for any quarterback to succeed. I gotta say, man, I definitely agree Kansas State's going to win this game. They have the home field advantage. They have a lot to play for. They have Deuce Vaughn. They've got so much talent, and they have a good defense. Give me Kansas State on the win for sure. But this is still a rivalry. Kansas is still having a great season, and I don't think they're going to lay down, man. And ultimately, with so much on the line, teams like this sometimes choke up and they sometimes play down to their opponent. I don't know what it is. It's the nerves or whatever the case may be. But there's so much on the line for a team like K-State that I can see so many things going wrong for them. But they're such a quality team and they're so well coached. I think they'll pull it out in the end. But I think Kansas is going to make it very uncomfortable for them. And I'm going to take Kansas on the spread.
I like it. All right, so moving on, the final game of this slate, the Apple Cup. Washington, a 2-point favorite on the road in Pullman against Washington State. Of course, this one also is very important because we already talked about the Pac-12 tiebreaker scenarios. Oregon just needs to win versus Oregon State, and they're in the Pac-12 championship against USC. However, if Washington beats Washington State and Oregon State upsets Oregon, Washington would be in the Pac-12 championship game. So they still have a little bit of a lifeline here. There also is another scenario where Washington gets in, but it's not going to happen. So, yeah, this game, again, has a lot of meaning. Washington State's quietly been a very solid team. They're not ranked, but they're one of the better unranked teams out there at 7-4. And this Washington State defense is pretty solid. And we've seen Michael Penix in this offense light up teams all season long. But do you think they will be able to light up a Wazoo defense on the road?
I do, man. So one thing, Kalen DeBoer, on Washington's opening possessions this season, they have only not scored a touchdown one time on opening possessions. Kalen DeBoer is a master of scripting opening touchdowns and getting ahead. And that gives your offense so much momentum if you were able to do that. And it really instills confidence. And I think that's something that has really, really helped Penix thrive and their offense in general because they set the tone early. They have a great game plan coming out. It's something that Kalen DeBoer is known for, man. He's a born winner. And I don't think that changes. I think Washington will win this game. I think they are the better side. They have the better offense. And I know Cam Ward is a dynamic quarterback over there for Wazoo. But he's had his struggles at times. And Wazoo does have a good defense. But the thing is, man, Washington is the better team. I think they have the better coaching staff. And I think they're going to come out on top.
Yeah, it's a contrast of pretty good offense versus mediocre defense and a mediocre offense versus a good defense. So I am going to agree with you here. I just think that Washington will win this game, but I'm really not confident in it, man. Like I was very close to picking Washington State in the upset, and to be honest, I
You could do
know
that still.
I know that I picked Washington and Oregon on this, for the sake of this video here on the podcast, but I really do just have a feeling that either one of Oregon or Washington is going to lose. I don't know which one, but I just think one of them is going to lose. But I'm a coward, and I'm not deciphering which ones I think is going to happen. So I'm picking Washington to win, but yeah, I could totally see either Wazoo or Oregon State winning one of their respective games, if not both. That would be just nuts. But I think
it's
one of them
okay,
happens,
Shoob.
man.
You weren't as cowardly as me by hedging on one of them. So, but anyway, let's move on.
Mountaineer Nation, let's ride. Mountaineer Nation, let's ride. Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.